Greetings, fellow humans, all you netizens out there in Finlandia who prefer audio-visual misinformation. Welcome to the first Human Day talk ever given. The occasion for uncelebrating Human Day was recently declared by the Natureocracy Alliance to occur every year on this day. 25 dec of the Federation calendar. You're not going to like what I have to say. I don't like what I have to say. There's no entertainment value. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that I'm wrong about everything. Across the bay, on the other side of these trees, is the proposed site of the future ruins of the Jordan Cove LNG terminal at the end of a proposed 234-mile pipeline to be built so natural gas, a byproduct of tight oil fracking, can be sent to China or Japan to return as commodities to stock our shelves for a time. 100 years ago, in 1919, when the Technical Alliance was formed, there were few cars here to cross a bridge, if there had been one. The bridge that is here was completed in 1936. When the bridge fails, will there still be cars and trucks using it? In other words, will the bridge outlast the car culture? I don't know. The first Europeans sailed past here in 1543, taking their Spanish guns, germs, and steel with them. The first Englishman, Sir Francis Drake, anchored nearby in 1579. Britain's Captain Cook passed by in 1778. And the Russians came to colonize North America, south of Alaska, in the 1790s to 1830s. And they did. By the 1790s, American fur traders had made the first, known to history, contact with the people living nearby. Though the fur traders were preceded by smallpox. By 1824, smallpox had helped to depopulate southern Oregon. The Coos Bay native population had been about 2,000 prosperous people living the hunter-gatherer life as they had for millennia, apart, that is, from the warfare, genocide, slavery, and the general rape and pillage selected for by early empire building among the Pacific Northwest chiefdoms to the north. As enabled by red cedar canoe technology. But the measles epidemic of 1836, the population here was about 800, a 60% depopulation by disease alone. Following a U.S. shipwreck here in 1852, the survivors told tales of abundant resources in the area, and Indo-European settlement began in 1853 with the establishment of Empire City, where I now live for a time. The first U.S. ship had entered Coos Bay by mistake in 1850 and soon left. But within a few years, the Coos Bay Commercial Company and settlers were industriously extracting resources from this area. Coal was found for the taking. Unsustainable coal exports helped to keep prosperous San Franciscans, recently enriched by gold, toasty warm and comfortable. Coal and lumber exports soon made Coos Bay prosperous for humans for a time. The first wooden sailing ships were being built here in 1857. And by 1859, the remaining Coos Bay area native peoples, the pre-Euro people, were removed to a reservation far to the north. Some were later to return as tolerably assimilated Euro-Americo-Sinoans, which they remain today. In 1855, 105-mile strip of Oregon's central coast, over 1 million acres, became the South Coast Indian Reservation. By the 20th century, the reservation's size had become a fraction of 1% of its original size. Most residents had died or returned to occupy unwanted bits of land in their former homelands. And the reservation's surplus land was given to immigrant settlers per business as usual. The first car arrived in 1908, a momentous event, and the car culture soon followed. In 1914, the first amphibious vehicle with pontoons and wheels, called the Land and Water Machine, and the first dune buggy were developed and made here. In the mid-20th century, Coos Bay was the world's largest lumber shipping port on the planet. For a time, there was seemingly endless lumber to prosperously export. The clear cutting of such trees as grow back every 40 to 60 years is still profitable for a time. As I was walking here, about 800 cars, trucks, and other overpowered vehicles whizzed past me per hour. So as I was walking here, about 2,800 vehicles with maybe 1.2 people in each also had places to go and less time to get there than I do. In the near future, with self-driving cars, I would expect more of them to be going further. If I want a Big Mac at 2 a.m., I'll send my car to get one. Everyone who is also an Anthropocene enthusiast, the 99+% of you, will consider this as progress towards a much better world to live in than those of us living in the early 21st century had to endure. Traffic does slack off here somewhat before dawn's early light, but I don't know how long I would have to stand here before I could see, no matter which way I looked, a moving, overpowered vehicle. As Howard T. Odum, systems ecologist and perhaps universal genius, noted, the worst mistake in modern civilization is allowing excess automobile horsepower. That is, we run cars and build throughways instead of asking what is the most appropriate transportation to make an optimal fit of people and environment. A 100 years ago, the most appropriate transportation was by water. A mosquito fleet of small boats provided for transportation needs. When speed was needed, such as to transport a doctor to a patient, a fast catamaran under sail or a tandem kayak would work. Cargo going out to sea, towards the sea, could be pushed out into the bay to go with the outgoing tide, or for the price of waiting about 6 hours, the cargo could go the other way with the incoming tide. To tramp the world, sails worked and still do, and will become more common again. Humans addicted to high power may eventually understand real progress when it sustainably comes to them, perhaps while they are kicking and screaming over many a dead body of the maladapted. Alas, nature is unkind. There are now, for a time, about 65,000 humans living in the Coos Bay metro area. Without fossil fuel inputs to support this hub of Anthropocene enthusiasm, there used to be, prior to a vast area-wide loss of environmental productivity over the last 200 years, about 2,000 people living here in about 40 to 50 small, semi-permanent villages as hunter-foragers. When the trucks and planes and trains and ships stop coming or going, when pipelines ring hollow and electric lines are safe to cut for the copper wire, how many people will be living a prosperous life in the Coos Bay area? More than 800? Maybe. And what about people living in areas elsewhere, such as near you, for example? During descent, the environmental productivity of this area will be further degraded. About 10% of the area has not yet been degraded compared to Aboriginal times. Will 1% remain unexploited? Will there be a 99% depopulation of the area's wildlife, livestock, pets and humans? Will there be a 98% depopulation? I don't know, but in 100 years, it will look different. Maybe in 100 years, there will be a grand parade in Coos Bay. Tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of people will line the streets, celebrating the construction of the first of many bits of humanity's Dyson sphere. Maybe, in the future, Coos Bay will be a spaceport. But I could be wrong. So don't believe anything I say or that you may think about anything. Instead, listen to nature, who has all the answers. And maybe listen to those who endeavor to listen to nature. Skeptically, of course. To quote the poet, when thoughts of the last bitter hour come like a blight over thy spirit, and sad images of the stern agony and shroud and pall and breathless darkness and the narrow house make thee to shudder and grow sick at heart. Go forth under the open sky and list to nature's teachings. Stop listening to the prattle, to the voices in your head, to one's own or another's chatter. Don't listen to what the media, mainstream or social, has to say, or to the teachers, pundits, the political and religious would-be leaders. Stop listening to the human, empire-built serving intelligentsia. Do it. To think is to listen. Listen to nature. Actually, do it, bitches.